Okay, so this is a budget. Check out the expenses I listed. To me, they're pretty reasonable based on what I know about the kind of rates of rent. My wife was a real estate agent. Um, Taxes taken out, amounts allocated. It's not perfect, but it'll get you in the ballpark. Okay. What I would like you to do is take a picture of this and then start figuring out for each column what would you have spent and how would the budget adjust. Now, I want you to notice something. Um, oh, at the beginning of the second paragraph here, things are a little wrong. It says my expenses total 400. They do not. They total 4,400. Okay, and income's only 4,150. So some things are going to have to be cut. And what I'm asking you is, what are you going to cut? How are you going to make things happen? When my sons were in college, I worked like a dog. I worked from 7:30 in the morning until almost every night 8:30. But some nights during particularly busy times of year, 9:30 to 10 o'clock at night. I often worked time on the weekends and I worked my summers to make sure that my sons would not have student loans. So in their case, they would be able to lop 500 off right away because they wouldn't have a student loan. Okay, so you need to figure out where you're going to cut, and different people will cut in different places. Okay, that's not a problem. Also, want you to keep in mind you haven't put any money into long-term savings yet, based on this chart. Okay, this salary is more or less a beginning teacher salary. Um, as a teacher, you get a small pay raise every single year, and when you get your master's degree, you usually get a big bump. So these things are rough and approximate. They are fair for a starting teacher. And then you have some decisions to make. For instance, you may say, instead of owning your own apartment, you're going to have an apartment with 2 or 3 other people, or you're going to stay at home for a while. And then you don't have to budget $1,700 for a mortgage or a rent. Um, how does this budget relate to some of the money management principles we've discussed in class? Do you see the danger of debt? What would happen if you had no debt? What are the consequences of your taxes? For example, income, sales, or property increasing. How does that affect it? Maybe now you're starting to say, hey, wait a minute. I can now see why people get upset if taxes increase, because the bottom line is if my total monthly income works out to be 4,150, but they increased the taxes and now it's only 4,000. Well, now I got to find another way to make up that $150. Or, you can see gas prices going out of control right now. I just read a statistic today that fuel prices have risen 40% in the last year. 40%. And when prices go up by 40%, it's got to come out of the budget. So where gas and oil in this budget is 200, in the past it might be 300 now. So it's a lot to consider. You figure out what it is that works best for you. But I want you to get a feel for what it's like. Where are you going to take money? Where are you going to put money together? What's it going to be like when I graduate and get a job and start working? So figure this out, put it all together. And then when you submit your homework, just mention a little something about, hey, this is what I found out from the budget. I'll be sure to put a question on there about that. Okay. So the next thing that I want to do is just talk to you a little bit about how to solve equations. So we do this thing called stop and start. You know about it all the time. I want to do that with these equations. I hope that you remember how to solve equations like this. If you do not a big deal. We're going to go through them in a minute. But for now, I'm going to pause, do stop and start. I want you to do all 3 equations. If you struggle with one of them, you might want to watch the answers for, say, the first 2 and then try the third after that. We'll see what happens. But stop and start. Okay, so with the first one, whenever you see variables on opposite sides of the equal sign, you want to do the opposite operation. And it's easiest to always start with the smallest number of the variables. So this says 2n, so I'm going to do the opposite, which is minus 2n, and I'm always going to do that to both sides. So I subtract 2n from both sides, I get 3n minus 17 is 40. Adding 17 to both sides, 3n is 57. right? See, most kids would remember to do the plus 17 to both sides, but they might not have remembered to do the minus 2n. But all you're doing is treating the n's, they're on opposite sides. You did opposites, the same way you treat the numbers, which you're very comfortable with, and they're on opposite sides. So it's opposite side, opposite operation. Dividing both sides by 3, and n is 19. Okay? Next up, distribute the 7. 7v plus 21 is 3v minus 19. Again, after I distribute the 7, and I don't even remember if we've talked about distributing this year, but distributing means when there's a number outside the package, you're going to multiply it by everything inside the package. When I think of distributing, I think of two situations. The first one I think of is during the Great Depression, we had things called soup kitchens, and people who could not afford food, they would go to the soup kitchens and they would be on like a cafeteria line, like you would have been in school, and they would, scoop out some soup, give you some bread. If there was any meat around, you get a little bit of meat, and that way you would not starve to death during the Great Depression. So they would distribute to the needy. The other situation I think of is Christmas time, because when we would get our Christmas presents together, we would turn around and have our kids distribute them. They would read whose name was on the tag, to Bobby, love mom and dad, to Jimmy, love mom and dad, and they would bring the presents to them. So those are situations where you distribute. Now imagine you go out to dinner with your family. The waitress and waiter comes over and they take your order. Then you go and the meals were brought out and they give meals to everybody except you. Can you just imagine how hangry you would get? How hungry and angry you would get? You'd be like, what the heck? Where's mine? Because it should have been distributed to all. And every once in a while, I see somebody forget. They'll do 7 times v is 7v, and then they'll put a plus 3. When that 7's on the outside, it gets distributed to everything. So 7v plus 21 equals 3v minus 19. And now it's an opposite side, opposite operation situation, just like in number 1, where you subtract 3v from both sides. That gives me 4v plus 21 is negative 19. Now I'm going to attack the plus 21 and do minus 21 to both sides. 4v is negative 40, dividing by 4, and v is negative 10. So the next one brings a lot of steps together here. The first thing it does is distributes to 3. Anytime we see a distribute setup, we want to do that right away. You can't go wrong that way. So I get 3b plus 9 plus b minus 1 equals 2b minus 6. Now the next step is, whenever you see variables on the same side, you see how these b's are on the same side? And these constants, 9 and negative 1, these numbers are on the same side? When they're on the same side, you do the same operation. Back in number 1 and in number 2, the variables were on opposite sides. The numbers were on opposite sides. So it was opposite side, opposite operation. Once I distribute here, at least in the beginning, the numbers are on the same side. So when it's on the same side, you want to do the same operation. So 3b's plus 1b make 4b. 9 and negative 1 make 8. Think about it this way. If I went backwards here and I had the 4b, couldn't I break that up into 3b and 1b? Or 2b and 2b? So if I see them broken up, I can just put them back together again. Okay? Now it looks exactly like number 1 or 2. So I subtract 2b's from both sides, and I get 2b plus 8 is negative 6. Then I minus the 8, and I get 2b is negative 14. And I divide by 2, and I get b is negative 7. I have 3 more of those to do before we're done for the day's lesson. Okay, stop and start time is up. First one, opposite side, opposite operation. Always start with the smallest number of 2n's. It's not about starting on the left or starting on the right. It's about starting where the smallest number of the variable is. So minus 2n to both sides, 3n minus 11 is 40. Adding 11 to both sides, 3n is 51. Dividing by 3, and n is 17. I have got to believe that somewhere on your praxis test, at least once, but maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 times, you're going to encounter equations like this. So I think it's important that we cover them. And a lot of times they need to be applied to situations. So if you don't know how to solve them, even if you apply them correctly, but you can't solve them, forget it. You're not going to get the question right. So I think this is a fundamental and important skill for you to know. Distributing the 7. 7v plus 21 is 3v minus 19. This says 11. It's supposed to say 19. Uh-oh. Hope I didn't screw this up here. Minus 3v to both sides. Yeah, good. Listen, thankfully. As you can see, I put the negative 19 here. I just missed it in that one spot. Subtracting 21 from both sides. 4v is negative 40. Divide by 4, and v is negative 10. Okay, we talked about what to do on number 3, right? We distribute right away, just like we distributed the 7. So I get 4b plus 12 plus b minus 3 is 2b minus 6. And in this case, I see a same side, same operation situation, so I combine like terms. Let's get all of our b's together. Let's put them back together. 4b's and 1b make 5b. 12 and negative 3 make 9. So 5b plus 9 equals 2b minus 6. Don't know why it says 11 there. I hope that that's just an oversight for that one step. So, yes, it is, thankfully. Now I have the 9 correctly placed here, okay? So 5b minus 2b is 3b, plus 9 equals negative 6. Subtracting the 9, 3b equals negative 15. Dividing by 3, b is negative 5. You know, I actually looked through and tried to find any mistakes like I did with this 11 here before I started recording it. It's a little late for that. But notice that the 12 and negative 3 make 9, and I forgot to change it here, but I did change it here to 9, okay? All right, the reason is because all I did to create this slide was I used the previous slide, and I just changed the numbers, and I forgot to change the one number, that's all. That's why these things happen occasionally. All right. We are now done with lesson number 13. And the next lesson is going to be all about review. No new stuff in the next lesson. All review. It's been a long chapter. I'm going to cover everything back over again, or a lot of it back over again. So next lesson is review. The lesson after that is a pretest. And the lesson after that is a test. So week 8 will be a pretest and a test. And the next lesson you have kind of sets up that material. Okay? Have a great day. Enjoy.